Antonia Brooks had always believed that grief made people softer, more patient, more gentle, more grateful. But the morning after her husband Samuel's funeral, she learned something else entirely. Grief could make people cruel. She was still sitting at the old oak dining table, Samuel's coffee mug untouched across from her, when Angela burst through the door, sunglasses on, heels clicking sharply like she was late for an appointment rather than visiting her widowed mother. "Mom," Angela said, dropping her handbag on the floor with a thud, "we need to talk. And you might want to sit down." Antonia stared at the woman she'd raised, polished, impatient, glued to her phone. A stranger wrapped in her daughter's skin. "I'm already sitting, Angela," she sighed. "What's so urgent?" Angela slid into the chair, her face tight. "We're going tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Antonia repeated, confused. "Where?" "To a retirement home." Angela said it like she was announcing a weather forecast. Antonia's breath hitched, a cold pressure blooming in her chest. "You're moving me to a home?" "Angela, why?" "Mom, please," Angela cut in, holding up a manicured hand. "The house is gone." Antonia blinked. "Gone? What do you mean gone?" Angela exhaled dramatically, as if she were the victim here. "I sold it. If you're still here, welcome to Voice of Jenna, a place where stories aren't just told, they're felt. Here, we dive into real emotions, family drama, quiet heartbreaks, unexpected twists, and the moments that change us. So sit back, relax, and let me tell you what happened next." For a moment, it didn't register. Words echoed in her mind, refusing to land, refusing to make sense. "You sold my house?" Antonia whispered. "Our house," Angela corrected. "Technically. And honestly, Mom, it was the best choice. You don't need all this space, and we need the money for—" She stopped, her jaw tightening, and for the first time Antonia sensed it. Angela was hiding something. A tremor of dread crawled up her spine. "Money for what, Angela?" Angela looked away, fiddling with her nails. "It doesn't matter. What matters is you're taken care of. And the car is sold too. So, pack light." Antonia froze. The car too. Everything Samuel had worked for, everything they had shared. "Angela," she said slowly, "how could you do this without asking me?" Her daughter rolled her eyes. "Because you would have said no. And, Mom, this is beneficial for both of us. You'll be safer in a facility. And she stopped again, expression tightening. Antonia's heart pounded. "And you what?" Angela's phone buzzed loudly across the table. She snatched it up instantly, too quickly. A message preview flashed before Antonia caught herself staring. Her stomach dropped. "The Europe reservation is confirmed for two." Two. Not one. Not her. Not even Angela's fiancé. Someone else. Someone Antonia had never heard of. Angela flipped the phone over, hiding the screen, but she was too late. Antonia felt the room tilt as the truth crept in like icy water. "You sold my house," she said, voice trembling. "For a vacation?" Angela didn't answer, but her silence screamed. Antonia's world cracked, not at the betrayal, but at the realization that the person betraying her was her own daughter. And just as she opened her mouth to speak, Angela's phone buzzed again. Angela panicked and shoved it into her bag. Antonia's gut twisted. She wasn't sure what Angela was hiding, but she was certain of one thing now. This was only the beginning of something darker. And what Antonia would discover next would change everything she thought she knew about Angela, about Samuel, and about herself. That night, Antonia could barely sleep. The house, her house, felt unfamiliar, as if someone had peeled something sacred away from its walls. Every creak sounded like a memory being packed into boxes she never proved. Sometime after midnight, she gave up on rest and drifted into Samuel's old study. Dusty, quiet, untouched since the day he died, this room was the last piece of him. But when she opened the door, something felt wrong. A stack of folders sat open on the desk. Samuel's desk. He was meticulous, always putting everything away neatly. He never left papers lying around, not even bills. Yet here, Scattered like someone had been rifling through them were documents she didn't recognize. Her pulse quickened. She reached for the first folder. Estate planning, confidential. Her breath caught. Samuel had never shown her this. The second folder was even stranger, bank statements, but the balances were far higher than anything she knew about. Antonia frowned, tracing her fingers over the numbers. 6 figures, 7. This couldn't be real. Samuel had been a schoolteacher, a simple man who clipped coupons and reused coffee jars. Where could this money have come from? She picked up another envelope, thick, sealed, her name handwritten on the front. But before she could open it, a floorboard creaked behind her. She jerked around. "Angela?" she whispered into the dark hallway. No answer. Just silence, too heavy, too sharp. She stood completely still, listening. Then another sound. A soft thud. Near the kitchen. Antonia's heart hammered. Someone was in the house. She grabbed the closest thing, an old flashlight, and stepped out of the study. The hallway felt narrower, darker. Her breath was loud. Too loud. Another noise. A shuffle. A drawer closing. Antonia's blood ran cold. She took one more step, and the kitchen light flipped on. Angela stood there, hair messy, wearing pajamas, rummaging in the junk drawer. "What are you doing up?" Angela muttered, as if she were the one startled. Antonia exhaled shakily, relief sweeping through her, then suspicion immediately replacing it. "What are you doing in the kitchen this late?" she asked. Angela shrugged. Couldn't sleep. Needed water. But her eyes weren't calm. They were sharp, nervous, watching Antonia too closely. Antonia's fingers tightened around the envelope behind her back. "Why were you in Dad's study earlier?" she asked quietly. Angela froze. Just for a split second, but it was enough. Enough for Antonia to know she'd struck the truth. "I wasn't," Angela said too quickly. Too defensively. Antonia's heart sank. Angela knew about the papers. And she didn't want Antonia to read them, which meant Samuel left something behind. Something Angela desperately didn't want her to find. Angela walked past her, brushing her shoulder, and said softly, "Mom, don't go digging into things you don't understand. It'll only make tomorrow harder." Then she disappeared down the hallway. But Antonia didn't move. She couldn't. She stood there in the dim light, gripping the sealed envelope, feeling its weight like a heartbeat in her palm. Something Samuel wanted her to have. Something he hid from Angela. Something that might explain everything: the strange bank accounts, the secrecy, the sudden shift in her daughter's behavior. And suddenly Antonia realized. Tomorrow wasn't just about Angela moving her into a home. Tomorrow was about discovering what Samuel had left behind. And why her daughter was so desperate to keep it hidden. What Antonia found inside that envelope would change the entire course of her life, forever. Morning came far too quickly. Antonia hadn't slept. She sat in the quiet kitchen with Samuel's sealed envelope in her lap, her hands trembling every time she tried to open it. The weight of it felt heavier than paper, like it could split her life into a before and an after. At 8 a.m., Angela swept into the kitchen dressed in travel clothes, sunglasses on her head, hair perfectly curled. She looked more like someone heading to brunch than someone uprooting her mother's life. "Good, you're up," Angela said briskly. "We need to leave in an hour." Antonia stared at her. "Leave for where exactly?" "To the retirement home," Angela said, pulling out her phone. "Ocean View Residence, you'll love it. It's peaceful, they have a garden, staff is great. You'll be safe there." Safe. Antonia's chest tightened. She hadn't asked to be kept safe. She hadn't asked to be removed from everything she had ever known. "Angela," she whispered, "this is still my home." "Not anymore. The papers are signed. The realtor wants the keys today." The room spun. Her home. Sold. Officially gone. "Why would you do this without telling me?" Antonia's voice cracked. Angela sighed dramatically, as if Antonia were an inconvenience. "Because you never would have agreed, Mom. And honestly, I can't keep dragging you around. I have my own life." Antonia felt something shatter quietly inside her. For years, she believed she and Angela were all each other had left. But at this moment, Angela felt like a stranger with her daughter's face. "I found some papers in your father's study last night," Antonia said slowly, watching Angela's expression carefully. Angela's lips tightened. "What papers?" "Financial documents. Accounts I didn't know existed." Angela's voice sharpened instantly. "You must have misread them." "I didn't open everything," Antonia said. "But I found this envelope." Her hand slipped instinctively toward her pocket, but it was empty. Her heart stuttered. She checked again, still nothing. The envelope was gone. She looked up at Angela. Angela leaned against the counter, arms crossed, eyes cold. "Looking for something, Mom?" The bottom dropped out of Antonia's stomach. "You took it." "Of course I took it," Angela snapped. "I'm not letting you ruin everything because you're stuck in the past." "Ruin what, Angela?" Antonia whispered. "What are you hiding from me?" Angela walked closer, lowering her voice. "Dad made mistakes, Mom. Financial ones. I'm fixing them. That money, whatever it is, it's not yours. It shouldn't even exist." "That's not true," Antonia said firmly, anger warming her voice. "If Samuel left something for me." "He didn't." Angela cut her off, but her eyes flickered, betraying doubt. Antonia saw it. That was the moment everything changed. Angela knew something, or feared something, that she didn't want Antonia to discover. A horn honked outside, Angela's friend, waiting to help load Antonia's things. Angela stepped back. "Finish packing. We leave in 1 hour. No arguments." She headed toward the door. But before leaving, she turned slightly and added, "And don't even think about going through Dad's things again. I've already locked the study." The door clicked shut behind her. Antonia stood frozen in the kitchen, hands shaking violently now. Her daughter wasn't just pushing her into a retirement home. She was hiding something from her. Something her husband wanted her to know. Something worth stealing before Antonia could open it. And if Angela was willing to take the house, the car, her freedom, what else was she willing to take? Antonia didn't know yet. But she would. Because inside that missing envelope was the truth Samuel had died trying to protect. And Antonia was done being silent. She would find that envelope. She would uncover the secret. And Angela had no idea what her mother was capable of, not anymore. What Antonia discovered next would turn her entire world upside down, and Angela's too. Antonia moved through the quiet house like she was walking through the memory of a life. Every corner whispered Samuel's name, his habits, his warmth. The photographs on the wall seemed to watch her as if they were afraid to witness what was happening. Her suitcase sat half-packed on her bed. Angela had insisted she only take essentials, as if this wasn't her home of 50 years. She brushed her hand along Samuel's nightstand. He always kept everything so neat, as though preparing for someone to discover his secrets one day. But his biggest secret had vanished. The envelope. And Angela had it. Antonia sat on the bed, fingers digging into the quilt. Her ears rang with a realization she didn't want to accept. Angela wasn't just lying.
She was planning something.
Her phone buzzed on the dresser. A message from Angela. "Be ready in 40 minutes. Don't make this harder." Antonia exhaled shakily, then typed back. "We need to talk." Angela's typing disappeared, then came the reply. "We'll talk on the way." Which really meant, "You'll talk, I'll ignore you." Antonia locked the phone and placed it face down. She sat still for a long moment, letting the truth settle inside her chest. Angela had never cared what she felt. She cared what she could take. Antonia stood and walked to the wardrobe. Beneath Samuel's old jackets, she found a small wooden box he had crafted years ago. He called it his thinking box. He'd carved the words "keep safe" into the top with a pocket knife. She hadn't opened it in years. Hands trembling, she lifted the lid. Inside, she found a few keepsakes, a dried rose, a train ticket from their honeymoon, a handwritten note that said "for Tony, always." But beneath those mementos, hidden under a false base she'd never known existed, there was a key, a small brass key with a faded tag. Her heart pounded. On the tag, in Samuel's neat handwriting. If anything happens to me, this opens everything she'll hide from you. Antonia's breath left her body in a single, shaky exhale. She'll hide from you. Samuel had known. He had predicted this. A new fear crept up her spine. What had Angela been doing behind the scenes, long before today? Why would Samuel think she'd hide something from her mother? Outside, a car door slammed, Angela's impatient stomp. Time was running out. Antonia slipped the key into her bra, close to her heart. Then she grabbed her coat and headed downstairs. Angela stood by the front door with her arms crossed. Finally, I thought. She froze as she studied her mother's face. Why do you look like that? Antonia swallowed, voice steady. Like what? Like you know something. Antonia forced a small smile. Just tired, Angela. Let's go. Angela narrowed her eyes, but didn't push further. She opened the door and motioned for Antonia to walk ahead. As Antonia stepped out, she glanced back into her home, her real home, wondering if she'd ever see it again. But the key pressed against her chest reminded her.
This wasn't the end.
When they reached the car, Angela's friend Maria greeted Antonia with an awkward smile. Hi, Mrs. Brooks. Ready for your new place? Antonia forced a polite nod. Angela climbed into the driver's seat, sighing dramatically. Let's get this over with. Before the engine started, Angela's phone lit up on the console. Maria accidentally glanced at the screen and whispered, did you mean to leave that email open? Angela cursed under her breath and snatched the phone, but not before Antonia saw just 2 words from the subject line. Transfer approved. Her blood ran cold. Angela shifted into reverse. The car rolled down the driveway. Antonia held onto her purse tightly, her pulse echoing in her ears. Something was happening behind the scenes, something involving money that did not belong to Angela. And Angela was running out of time to keep it hidden. Because Antonia now had Samuel's key. And once she found what it unlocked, Angela's lies would crumble one by one. The first clue would come sooner than Angela ever expected. The ride to the new place felt longer than any journey Antonia had taken in her life, even though it was barely 40 minutes away. Every bump in the road rattled her bones, but not as much as the silence between her and Angela. Angela tapped her fingers on the steering wheel, her jaw clenched tight. Maria sat in the back, scrolling anxiously through her phone, pretending not to notice the tension strangling the air inside the car. Antonia kept her eyes on the passing trees, each one blurring into the next like a life rushing by too quickly. She had the sudden, sinking feeling that she was being moved like unwanted luggage, not a mother, not a human being, just an obligation Angela wanted to discard. But what stung deeper was the memory of Angela as a child, the little girl who used to cling to her hand, afraid of thunderstorms. The teenager who cried at her lap after her first heartbreak. The young woman who once whispered, "Mom, I'd be lost without you." Somewhere along the way, that little girl disappeared. Antonia wondered if she'd ever meet her again. Halfway through the trip, Angela's phone buzzed sharply. She ignored it. A second buzz followed. Then a third. With a frustrated groan, Angela snatched up the phone. Maria leaned forward, whispering, "Is it the bank again?" Antonia pretended not to hear, but her ears sharpened instantly. Angela shot Maria a glare. "Don't start." Maria lifted her hands helplessly. "It's your problem, I'm just saying. You can't keep ignoring them." Antonia shifted in her seat. "Bank? Is everything all right?" Angela gave a laugh far too brittle to be real. "Mom, I told you it's nothing. Just paperwork." But the word paperwork tasted like a lie. Antonia turned her face to the window again, but her pulse beat faster. If the bank was calling repeatedly, something was wrong. Something big. Maria hesitated before speaking again. "We're almost at the place, Mrs. Brooks. It's a very, comfortable home." The pause before comfortable made Antonia's stomach tighten. Comfortable for whom? They turned down a narrow road lined with aging apartment complexes, the kind with peeling paint and rusty stair rails. Children played barefoot on cracked sidewalks. A dog barked somewhere in the distance, chained too tight to move. Antonia's breath stilled. Angela pulled into a cramped parking lot and killed the engine. Well, Angela said, forcing a bright tone, here we are. Temporary, of course. At least until we figure things out. Maria climbed out of the car quickly, offering her hand to Antonia. Careful, the step is a little loose. Loose? Temporary? Figure things out? Nothing about this felt planned. This felt like a last-minute scramble. Antonia forced herself out of the car, clutching her purse. The keys Samuel left her pressed into her skin like a burning promise. The building loomed before her, 4 stories of faded beige walls that looked like they hadn't seen a paintbrush since the 1980s. Angela gestured toward the entrance.
Come on, Mom.
Let's take a look. But Antonia stopped walking. Angela, she said softly, how much money have you spent? Angela's entire body stiffened. Mom, this isn't the time. Then when? Antonia's voice remained calm but firm. Because every time I ask, you avoid the question. Maria glanced away, chewing her lip nervously. Angela turned slowly, anger flickering in her eyes. You think I'm doing this for myself? You think any of this is fun for me? Antonia held her gaze. What do you call selling my house? My car? Taking my signature from the safe? Using my accounts without me? Angela inhaled sharply, her eyes darting to Maria, as if silently begging her to step in. But Maria backed away. Mom, Angela whispered, voice trembling, I needed the money. I didn't have a choice. Antonia stepped closer. Everyone has a choice. Angela's throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. Well, I didn't. For the first time, Antonia saw something flicker behind Angela's anger. Fear. It wasn't the fear of getting caught. It was deeper. And suddenly Antonia wasn't angry. She was worried. Angela, she said softly. What happened? But before Angela could answer, a loud voice thundered from across the parking lot. Miss Angela Brooks. They all turned. A thick-set man in a suit marched toward them, a folder in hand, 2 other men trailing behind him. Angela's face drained of all color. Maria whispered, Oh, God, it's them. The man stopped a few feet away, flipping open the folder. We've been trying to reach you for days. This is your final notice. Antonia's heart pounded. Angela's hands shook violently. Please, not here. Not in front of my mother. But the man didn't care. Angela Brooks, you owe $286,400 in outstanding debts. As of today, your accounts are frozen. Antonia staggered backwards. Her daughter, her only child, was drowning. Angela burst into tears, covering her face. Maria rushed to her side, trying to console her. Antonia stood frozen as the numbers echoed in her ears. 286,000. And then, slowly, painfully, one truth rose above the chaos. Angela hadn't sold the house to hurt her. Angela had sold it to save herself. But that didn't excuse the lies. And it didn't erase the betrayal. As the man handed Angela the final notice, Angela's hands trembled so violently the papers scattered onto the asphalt like white leaves. Antonia watched them flutter. One page landed at her feet. She picked it up. At the bottom, highlighted in bold, if payment is not received within 72 hours, legal action will be taken. 72 hours. 3 days. And Angela had no money left. But Antonia did. More money than Angela could ever imagine. If Antonia stepped in, she could save her daughter. If she didn't, their world would collapse. Her choice would define everything. But for now, she simply whispered Samuel's name inside her heart because she knew exactly what he would say. Tony, think carefully. Not every drowning person wants to be saved. The chapter ends here, with Antonia standing in a cracked parking lot, a notice in her hand, a daughter in tears, and a decision she was no longer sure she was ready to make. Antonia didn't sleep that night. Angela had cried herself into exhaustion in the tiny bedroom of the cramped apartment, Maria comforting her until her sobs faded into quiet hiccups. Now the whole place was silent, except for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional creak of old pipes. Antonia sat on the sagging sofa, clutching Samuel's key in her palm. She turned it over again and again, the metal warm now from her skin. 3 days. 72 hours until her daughter's world fell apart. And here she was, trying to decide whether saving Angela was the right thing, or the same mistake she'd made her entire life. For decades, she'd been the one who patched wounds, solved problems, softened consequences. She'd been the steady pillar everyone leaned on until she couldn't stand anymore. She whispered into the darkness, "Samuel, what would you have me do?" No answer came. Just a familiar ache. A knock sounded at the front door.
Soft.
Hesitant. Antonia's heart skipped. This was not a place where people visited at night. She pushed herself up, bones stiff and slow, and opened the door. Maria stood there, hair in a messy bun, eyes tired but sincere. "Mrs. Brooks," she whispered, "can we talk?" Antonia nodded and stepped aside. Maria sat across from her, wringing her hands nervously. I owe you some honesty." Antonia raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "Angela," Maria said, voice barely a breath. "She's been hiding things from you for a long time." Antonia stayed silent, letting her talk. "I know she's your daughter, and I'm not trying to betray her," Maria said quickly. "But she's drowning, Mrs. Brooks. And she keeps pulling you down with her." Antonia stiffened.
Tell me.
Maria inhaled shakily. She didn't just lose money. She invested in a business deal with a man she barely knew. He promised her huge returns. She believed him. And then he disappeared, Antonia whispered. Maria nodded regretfully. With everything she had, she panicked, started borrowing, taking loans, using your name when she couldn't use hers. Antonia felt the room tilt under her. "My name," she echoed. Maria flinched. "One of the banks said she forged your signature." I tried to talk her out of it, but she was desperate. A silence fell heavy between them. Antonia closed her eyes. Samuel had warned her about this once, after Angela's 10th impulsive purchase in her 20s. "She loves you, Tony," he had said gently. "But she leans on you like there's no ground under her feet. One day she'll drag you down without meaning to." Antonia opened her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked. Maria hesitated. "Because she's my friend. And because I thought maybe she'd fix it before it got this far." A tear slipped down Antonia's cheek, surprising her. She brushed it away quickly. "What does Angela expect me to do now?" she asked softly. Maria looked down. "She's hoping you'll bail her out. Again." Of course she was. Antonia's shoulders sagged. "And if I don't?" Antonia whispered. Maria didn't sugarcoat it. "She'll lose everything. Maybe face legal charges." The words hung in the air like smoke. At that moment, Angela's bedroom door creaked open. Angela stepped out, hair tangled, eyes swollen and red. She looked much younger than her 35 years, like a frightened child. "Mom," she murmured. Antonia sat up straighter. "Come here, Angela." Angela walked over slowly, sinking onto the couch beside her, avoiding her eyes. "Mom, I'm sorry," she whispered. "I messed up. I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want to disappoint you again." The guilt in her voice was real. The fear was real. But Antonia had learned something important in the past days. Real emotion doesn't erase real harm. Antonia took Angela's shaking hands in hers. "You didn't disappoint me by failing," Antonia said softly. "You disappointed me by hiding, by taking from me without trust." Angela burst into fresh tears. I know. I thought I could fix everything before you found out." Antonia squeezed her hand gently. "And did you?" Angela shook her head, sobbing. Antonia leaned back, letting the weight of years settle into her chest. "You want me to save you," she said slowly. "Is that right?" Angela looked up, eyes shining with hope and shame. "Mom,
I don't want to ask, but yes.
I need you." Maria looked away, biting her lip. Antonia held her daughter's face in her palms. "You have 72 hours, Antonia whispered. "But before I decide anything, you need to tell me the whole truth. Every mistake, every lie, every debt. No hiding, no excuses." Angela blinked, startled. Everything. Everything, Antonia repeated firmly. If you want my help, you give me your honesty. Angela opened her mouth to respond, but a loud vibration interrupted her.
Her phone.
The caller ID glowed through the cracked screen. Unknown, urgent. Angela froze. Maria's eyes widened. Antonia felt dread curl in her stomach like a living thing. Angela whispered, "It's him, the man who took my money." Antonia's blood ran cold. He was calling.
Now.
And whatever he wanted, it wasn't going to save Angela. It was going to destroy her. Antonia barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Angela's cold stare, the way she had spoken to her like she was a burden, a responsibility to get rid of. Morning sunlight cut through the curtains, soft but merciless. Antonia walked into the hallway and paused in front of Richard's old study, a room she hadn't stepped into since the funeral. Her hand trembled on the doorknob. For years she had avoided the room because it still smelled like him, warm cedarwood and aftershave. She pushed the door open. Dust motes floated like tiny ghosts in the beams of sunlight. Everything was exactly as Richard had left it. Neat, intentional, quiet. Except for one thing. A brown envelope on the desk. Face down.
Clean.
Untouched by dust. Antonia frowned. That envelope hadn't been there before. Richard always cleaned the desk before they traveled anywhere, and she was sure she'd never seen it. With hesitant fingers, she lifted it. Her name written on top. Antonia, in Richard's handwriting. Her throat tightened. She sat slowly, like her body couldn't keep up with her heart. Inside, there was a letter and a USB drive. She unfolded the paper. Richard's handwriting spilled across the page. If you are reading this, my love, it means I didn't get the chance to tell you everything.
I'm sorry.
But I need you to know, you are not alone. And you are not left with nothing. What comes next may shock you, but trust that it was all done for your protection. Antonia pressed a hand to her chest. Protection? From what? From who? The letter continued. Our Angela. I love her, but she is not who you believe she is. There are things I uncovered, conversations, transactions, things I prayed you'd never see. I hoped she would change. I hoped she would care. But I've planned for every possibility, including the one I fear the most. Her breath caught. Transactions? What had Angela been doing behind their backs? Her eyes moved to the last lines. Before you do anything, watch the video on the USB. It explains everything. And remember, I left you prepared. More than you know. Her hand shook as she picked up the small black USB drive. She stared at it, her heartbeat loud in her ears. If she watched it, her entire life could change. If she didn't, she would never know the truth Richard died carrying. She inserted the USB into the old laptop and waited for the screen to load. It opened instantly. A single video file. Untitled MP4. She hovered her cursor over the play button. Her finger trembled. She clicked, and the first frame froze her blood. It wasn't Richard. It wasn't a lawyer. It was Angela, sitting in a cafe, laughing with a stranger, and sliding a document across the table. Antonia leaned forward, heart pounding as the video continued. But the screen suddenly went black. A corrupted file warning appeared. The rest of the video was missing. Antonia gasped, gripping the desk. What had Richard discovered? Who was Angela meeting? And what was on that missing part of the video? Her world tilted again, but this time, she felt something new rising in her chest. Not fear. Not heartbreak. A growing fire. Richard tried to warn me, she whispered. And, Angela, what have you done? She opened the drawer instinctively, searching for anything else Richard might have left. And that's when she found it. A second envelope. Unopened. Labeled. For when she betrays you. Antonia froze. Her breath caught. Her fingers shook as she reached for it. But behind her, the floor creaked. She wasn't alone. Antonia spun around so fast her chair nearly toppled. Hello? Who's there? Silence. Only the faint hum of the old ceiling fan. Her heart thudded painfully. Maybe she imagined it. Maybe grief was playing tricks on her. But then another soft creak, closer this time. She clutched the second envelope to her chest and moved toward the doorway, every step cautious. Her pulse echoed in her ears, but she forced herself forward. Just as she reached the hallway, Angela appeared, not smiling, not apologetic. Her daughter stood there with folded arms, a cold glare cutting through the room. Searching through Dad's office now?
Really, Mom?
Antonia's breath caught. Angela's sudden appearance felt wrong, suspicious even. I heard something, Antonia whispered, trying to stay calm. I didn't know you were home. Angela rolled her eyes. I came back because you weren't answering your phone. We're leaving tomorrow. You need to pack. There was again that tone. That commanding, impatient tone. Antonia had heard it her entire life, but never realized how it hollowed her out. Angela's eyes dropped to Antonia's hand. What's that? She asked sharply. Antonia quickly placed the envelope behind her back. It's nothing. Angela stepped closer. I said, what is that? For a moment, the air between them tightened like a rope being pulled from both ends. It's from your father, Antonia replied quietly. Angela's face flickered, panic, then quickly masked by irritation. Well, let me see it. No, Antonia said, surprising even herself. It's private. Angela blinked. She wasn't used to the small word no coming from the woman she'd always controlled. Her voice sharpened. Dad didn't leave anything. I handled everything with the lawyer. So whatever you think you found, it's old. It's irrelevant. Antonia felt her stomach twist. Richard's warning echoed in her mind. There are things I uncovered, conversations, transactions. Her daughter's calmness now felt staged. Angela, Antonia said slowly, why did you really sell the house? And the car? Why so quickly? Angela stiffened. I told you. Europe. A new chapter. You need to be taken care of. Antonia held her gaze. You didn't ask me.
You didn't tell me.
You just took everything. Angela's jaw tightened. You're being dramatic. Antonia's eyes filled. Am I? Or is there something you don't want me to find out? A moment of silence. Then Angela laughed, forced too sharp. You're overthinking. Honestly, Mom, it's exhausting. But the laughter didn't reach her eyes. Antonia felt something shifting. A new resolve building inside her. I'm not going anywhere tomorrow, she said quietly. Angela's smile dropped instantly. What did you just say? I'm not going, Antonia repeated. Her voice trembled, but she held firm. Not until I understand what Richard was trying to tell me. Angela's face darkened. She stepped closer, almost threateningly close. Mom, she said, her voice low and icy, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Antonia stepped back, clutching the envelope against her heart. Angela reached out, but Antonia moved away. I need time to think, Antonia said. And I need you to leave the room. Angela stared at her like she no longer recognized the woman in front of her. Then, with a long, cold exhale, she muttered,
Fine.
But don't do anything stupid. She walked out, slamming the door behind her. Antonia waited until her footsteps faded. Then she locked the door. Her hands shook as she opened the second envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. One sentence. Go to the bank. Ask for box 39. Her breath stopped. What was box 39? Why had Richard been so secretive? And why did Angela want everything moved so fast? Antonia stared at the paper, feeling the gravity of it all closing in around her. She needed answers. She needed truth. And tomorrow, while Angela believed she would be packing, Antonia would go to the bank. But she didn't know that someone else was planning to follow her. The beginning of the real revelation had just begun. The bank lobby smelled of polished wood and faint antiseptic, a sterile calm that did nothing to soothe the storm in Antonia's chest. She clutched her handbag tightly, the envelope from Richard pressed against her palm like a talisman. Every step toward the counter felt like a step into a new life, one she hadn't expected but now demanded. Good morning. How can I help you today? The bank clerk's smile was courteous, practiced.
I
need to access box 39. It's under Richard Brooks' name, Antonia said, trying to keep her voice steady. The clerk's eyes flicked to her ID and then to the computer screen. A faint frown appeared. I'll need a signature and confirmation of authorization. Antonia swallowed. I am the authorized person. He left this in my care. She handed over the envelope, the papers rustling between her fingers. The clerk studied them, typing a few keys, then nodded. Yes, box 39. Please follow me. Antonia's heartbeat quickened. Each step down the dim, carpeted hallway to the vault felt like a drumbeat, counting down to something monumental. The metallic scent of the vault seeped into her senses, making her palms sweat. When the clerk opened the box, Antonia froze. Inside was a leather-bound folder, heavy and embossed with Richard's initials. She lifted it slowly, as if it were both fragile and sacred. Her fingers trembled as she opened the cover. Stacks of papers. Bank statements, legal documents, trust funds, and at the bottom, a keycard with instructions scrawled in Richard's unmistakable handwriting. Angela must not know. She cannot inherit what is rightfully hers only through me. Antonia's chest tightened. Shock, disbelief, and a strange sense of vindication washed over her. Her husband had left her not only security, but a plan, a way to reclaim control of her own life. But before she could process it all, the hairs on her neck prickled. The vault door had clicked again. She spun around.
Angela.
Her daughter's face was pressed against the doorway, eyes wide, jaw set. Mom, she said softly, almost too softly. I knew you'd come here. Antonia froze, holding the folder like a shield. Angela, how did you? I followed you, Angela interrupted, stepping fully into the vault. I knew you were up to something. I needed to see what it was before you tried to stop me. Antonia's mind raced. Her daughter, who had always seemed impulsive and self-absorbed, had now crossed a line. The betrayal of the house and car now paled compared to this intrusion. I didn't need you here, Antonia said quietly but firmly. This, everything, is mine. Dad left it for me, not you. Angela's eyes flashed. You think that makes you better than me? After all these years, you think you can just take control? Antonia felt the weight of every year, every sacrifice she had made, the nights she stayed awake worrying, the years she had silently endured Angela's arrogance. Now, the power had shifted, and she could feel it coursing through her. You don't get to decide for me anymore, she said, voice rising but steady. I've spent my life giving. Now it's my turn to claim what's rightfully mine. Angela stepped closer, the tension crackling like electricity. You can't just erase everything I did. I'm still your daughter. Antonia's gaze hardened. And I am still me. And I am still your mother. But you will not control my life, or my inheritance any longer. Angela's lips trembled, and for a moment, Antonia thought she might break into tears. But then she straightened, defiance blazing. I won't let you take everything. Dad wanted me involved. You're lying. Antonia swallowed, the folder clutched to her chest. I'm not lying. Dad left this for me.
You'll see.
Everything is documented. Angela's eyes darted to the folder, then back to Antonia. Her face paled. For the first time, doubt flickered in her expression. You can't. This changes everything. Antonia's pulse pounded in her ears. The confrontation she had feared, dreaded, and prepared for had finally come. But she also realized this was not just about money. It was about respect, trust, and finally taking her life back. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Yes, it changes everything. For both of us. But from now on, you follow the rules Dad set, or you step aside. Angela stared, anger and shock warring in her features. Then, slowly, she backed away, muttering under her breath, This isn't over. Antonia exhaled, leaning against the cool metal of the vault. The folder in her hands wasn't just papers. It was her freedom, her vindication, her path forward. But even as she felt a surge of triumph, a chill ran down her spine. Angela's warning wasn't empty. This was far from over. The next move could change everything again. And Antonia knew, deep down, that tomorrow's revelations could be even more explosive. Her hands tightened around the folder. She was ready. But would Angela be ready for the truth? The real battle had only just begun. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the law office, casting sharp lines across the polished floor. Antonia sat behind the desk, the folder from Richard Brooks open in front of her. The papers glinted under the light, each document a testament to her late husband's foresight, his love, and her right to stand tall. Angela paced the room like a caged animal, her heels clicking against the marble, voice sharp. "You think you can just take it all? After everything I did, after I sold the house, the car, this is mine too." Antonia's hands rested calmly on the folder, her eyes steady and unwavering. "Everything Dad left was meant for me, not for you to squander or manipulate. You made your choices, Angela. Now it's time to face the consequences." Angela stopped mid-step, her chest heaving, her face pale with frustration and realization. You're serious? All of this? I've never been more serious in my life," Antonia replied, her voice low but firm, carrying the weight of decades of endurance and sacrifice. "I trusted you once. I gave you chances. But this time, I won't let fear, or guilt, or family pressure decide my future. I'm taking control, finally." Angela's hands trembled, and for the first time, she looked vulnerable, unguarded. Antonia could see the storm of emotion raging in her daughter. Shock, anger, regret, and perhaps a sliver of understanding. The lawyer stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Ms. Brooks, everything is in order. The accounts, the trusts, the directives. Legally, all assets are confirmed under your name. There is no dispute. You have full control." Antonia nodded, feeling a surge of clarity and relief. She turned her gaze back to Angela. "This isn't about money, Angela. It's about respect, trust, and finally valuing yourself and those around you. I spent my life sacrificing for our family. Today, I reclaim not just the wealth, but my life." Angela sank into the chair, her head bowed. I didn't know. I thought." Her voice cracked, betraying the guilt she had carried. "I thought I was helping, but I didn't understand." Antonia's expression softened, though her resolve remained strong. "You can't undo what's been done, Angela. But you can learn. You can grow. And so can I. But my decisions now are my own. I won't be manipulated. I won't be ignored. And I certainly won't be forgotten." The room was quiet, filled with the weight of truth and the sharp contrast between past mistakes and present empowerment. Antonia took a deep breath, letting the sunlight warm her face. For the first time in years, she felt truly free, unburdened by the expectations and greed of others. She closed the folder slowly, the sound echoing in the quiet office like the final punctuation on a long, painful sentence. "Angela," she said softly but clearly, "I love you. But love doesn't mean letting others control your life, or mine. Learn from this. Respect it. And perhaps one day, we can move forward honestly." Angela looked up, tears glistening in her eyes. The fire of defiance had faded, replaced by a tentative, almost fearful respect. I will try," she whispered. Antonia stood, the weight of her age and experiences grounding her, but her posture straight and strong, radiating a calm authority. "That's all I ask. Now we move forward. I choose my path. I choose my freedom. And I choose myself." Outside the window, the city buzzed with life, indifferent yet full of opportunity. Antonia felt that energy resonate within her, a reminder that her life, though altered by loss and betrayal, was still hers to live fully. She stepped out of the office, sunlight embracing her, and with every step, she felt lighter, freer, unstoppable. For the first time, she understood. True wealth wasn't measured in dollars or houses, but in self-respect, in the courage to reclaim one's life, and in the wisdom to rise above those who doubted or deceived her. Antonia Brooks, 75 years young, had faced betrayal, greed, and the shadows of the past, and emerged not only unbroken but empowered. And as she walked into the bustling city streets, the warmth of the sun on her face, she whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning. My life, my choices, my freedom, no one can take them from me." Her heart swelled with an unshakable truth. She was finally the author of her own story. And before we end today's story, let me leave you with this. Women like her, like all of us, don't become strong by accident. We become strong because life gives us moments that test us, break us, shape us, and force us to choose ourselves. Every betrayal, every manipulation, every moment where someone tries to dim your light is also a moment where you get to decide how brightly you rise afterward. Remember this: you are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to walk away from people who take more than they give. And most importantly, you are allowed to rebuild your life in a way that honors your worth. Stories like these aren't just entertainment. They're reminders that women can be quiet, but powerful, gentle, but unbreakable, hurt, but never defeated. So if you needed a sign today, you're stronger than the moment you're in. You're wiser than the people who tried to fool you. And you deserve a life where your peace is non-negotiable. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to Voice of Jenna so you never miss the next chapter in our world of twists, lessons, and unforgettable moments. Your support means the world to me, and trust me, the stories only get better from here.